This is a video of a example lesson plan for the jazz section in the genre spotlight module. So what would be a really nice opening would be some free warm-ups, you know, your normal just warming up. We want the chest area, head voice, we want everything warming up, maybe some clicking, something a bit bouncy to get in a bit of energy would be a really nice. And then something that worked really nicely today, I said, are there any jazz songs you're already familiar with that you've heard of? And the student knew Fly Me to the Moon, which is perfect. So we sang through Fly Me to the Moon, and then I said, why don't we introduce some scat into the instrumental section? And for some further listening, if you would like to, after the lesson, listen to some Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong. You know, they are really the originals for scat, so they would be brilliant to have a listen to. And you can sing anything you want, but in the instrumental, we're going to add some scat, anything you want, so the student feels completely free. It doesn't matter what they do, and that can be a nice introduction to some scat to then go on and listen to. And then we were doing some work on how to click on 1 and 3 and 2 and 4. So fly me 1, 2, 3, 4, fly me to the moon and let me play on, and clicking there, or the backbeat, fly me to the moon. God, that feels more natural. Fly me to the moon and let me play on. So doing some clicking and getting used. Really, we probably want the backbeat one most of the time for the jazz, for when we're doing the jazz. We're going to be mostly in kind of a speech chest voice, and then occasionally going up into head is really nice. So in other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. And then coming back to kind of that speech kind of place where this student is quite natural there anyway, so that felt quite natural. And then to just go up to head voice and feel quite free and flexible. Then in most of the lesson, we were playing around with delivery, and the idea that with jazz, we could go fly me to the moon and let me, or we could go fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars, and break up phrases in different ways, or use some slides. Fly me to the moon and let me play among. So there's so many different ways of phrasing, you know, just one line, and so many different nuances and ways of breaking it. And I always think of it like a pie, so the bars in the end are still the same, but what you can do within those bars, you can change things up and put rests in and do so much, and jazz is great for that. So we were doing a lot of that work because the student was reasonably familiar with the song, which helped. And then the words that the student would describe, because they hadn't really done that much jazz, they were saying it was fun, it felt bouncy, and they liked the freedom that it gave the voice. So the voice wasn't having to copy or do something that someone else was already doing, and it wasn't so strict. They just felt quite free to try things out, which is jazz. That's perfect. The later part of the lesson, I thought, well, this is going well. The student is quite liking this genre already. So I introduced the student to postmodern jukebox, which I really do use for teenagers. Really love this, because postmodern jukebox are taking songs that are familiar. You know, they're familiar songs that have been in the charts recently, and then they're putting this jazzy twist on. So it's perfect. So we had a listen to a few different postmodern jukebox songs that were on YouTube, and I asked the student to tell me in what way did they think, how were postmodern jukebox making these songs sound jazzy compared to the original pop songs, and were there any words that came to mind? And the student very naturally would be describing things like, they said, oh, it sounds retro, so the era, the mood. They said the rhythm, it felt pacier. What else were they talking about? The instruments, of course, you know, they noticed what instruments were being used, the rhythm, the costumes even, just the feel. So that was really nice, and I think students could give their own, any answers, and there's no right or wrong, but it's really nice to inspire the student to start listening and start analysing and deciding for themselves, you know, why does that sound jazzy to them, rather than there was no right or wrong. Then the last closing part, we took a song which I thought might suit the student quite well, and I really like what they've done with it. Postmodern Jukebox have done a version of Adele, Hello, and they've made it quite jazzy sounding. So we both together kind of sang this at the end and put this jazzy spin on Hello, just tried things out and quite liked it, and thought, okay, we'll come back in future lessons and maybe work some more on this piece because it could be really, really good. And I think right at the end we also discussed Billie Eilish, you know, is really big at the moment, and we discussed how, oh okay, some of these jazz ideas, how that's coming into Billie Eilish and some of the modern artists that are out at the moment. But it was really interesting to talk about how this jazz has maybe inspired some of their music, and La La Land as well we talked about, and show tunes, and how there's this crossover. So it was a really, really, really nice lesson. It went really well, it flowed really well, and I thought, oh, I will record that as an example lesson plan in case it's useful. So yeah, thumbs up.